Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a menace to society.
Then so shall you be. Welcome to One Menace to Society. I'm chatting today with Russ Culka from Disclosure Activists. Thank you very much for joining us, Russ.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lisa. Thank you very much.
And it's a pleasure to finally get to chat with you. I came across your organization when I was in Sedona, Arizona, and I was hoping to speak with somebody about vortex energies and stuff like that. And you blew my mind because you're like, wait, we're more than that. Our group is doing a lot more than vortex tours and stuff. So I don't even know where to start because what you're disclosing seems sort of phenomenal.
Well, we're not disclosing anything yet, but we're certainly trying to get the collective public towards a disclosure announcement of the ET presence that engages the human race by official world government. Before we start there, though, I think a quick introduction about myself is useful for you and your guests.
Oh, I love that.
Um, so again, my name is Russ Culka. I am 32 years old. I reside in New York City. My foray into this particular phenomenon began when I was about 8 years old. I guess you could say it runs through my blood. It's organically built into my DNA. My mother's father had always believed in this stuff and had inherently an interest in it. He had passed away, and my grandmother had remarried a Air Force veteran who is passed away now, but he was in the Air Force, stationed at a Laredo Air Force Base in Texas, which is now a defunct Air Force base. And he had a sighting when he was during the Korean War between 50 and 53, I believe. And he was flying between Texas and Louisiana doing reconnaissance. And all of a sudden, while he was in a C-130 transport plane, out of his window to the left came a craft. It flew around his plane that he was with six of the crew members in and shot off in the blink of an eye. There are plenty of stories like that.
Yeah.
And when he landed, he was greeted by what we term Alphabet City. So the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and they had told him that whatever he saw wasn't there. And sure, he could talk about it all he wants, but if he does, then they'll go ahead and murder his family, his dog, his bird. And that's how they got military people to shut up. And so he told me about this when I was 10 years old. And I think that story is what sparked an interest in my heart that was already organically inside of me. And it brought me down a rabbit hole a lot further than where I used to be. Reading many books, watching many documentaries, talking to many witnesses, whistleblowers, etc. And the disclosure activist came about right after Trump's inauguration speech in January. I was sitting at my computer talking to my other co-founder, Lisa, who used to be with me in another activist group called the Disclosure Lobby, which was put on by Stephen Bassett's Paradigm Research Group, who we're augmenting the work of. And a light just went off in my head, and I said, I have to do something here. And
What was
I
it?
think
What was it about his speech that made you feel that impact?
he had mentioned something during the closing moments of his speech where he alluded to the fact that we need to unlock the mysteries of space. We need to invest in the technologies of the future of tomorrow, and then we need to cure the earth of diseases. And part of that speech was part and parcel to the fact that the White House and the different administrations of the White House fully know different pieces of what's going on. It was pulled out from under the rug from them by the Pentagon. The White House doesn't hold on to the ET secret. It's within the bowels of the Pentagon, and we'll certainly talk about that.
Okay.
But there was all of this key events that led up from 1993 to 2017's inauguration speech by Trump that said, okay, there needs to be a true dedicated activist group to getting this message out, getting the public gearing up and ready for this, and then eventually getting some sort of official announcement. But I think what would be useful here for you and your listeners is to jump right back in time to 1993 when the official effort for disclosure came to be.
I liked 93. That was a good year. I'm ready to jump back there.
Cool. So I would say that the official lens of disclosure, the official move to disclose the extraterrestrial issue, started in 1993 through a billionaire philanthropist named Lawrence Rockefeller. And Lawrence Rockefeller was a good friend of the Clintons, both Bill and Hillary. And being a billionaire, being a philanthropist, and being a good friend of the Clintons, when Lawrence approaches the Clintons and asks them to do something, it's kind of hard to say no. So it's dubbed the Rockefeller Initiative. It went on for 3 years, between 1993 and 1996, and it was an effort by Lawrence Rockefeller to get Bill Clinton to disclose what he knew about the UFO initiative. And the reason we know about this initiative is a UFO researcher out of Winnipeg, Canada, named Grant Cameron, filed a FOIA request for the Clinton Library, and somebody made a goof by accident to our liking and released 10,000 pages.
What?
Of the rock, yeah. Yeah.
It was like a 1993 WikiLeaks?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess the universe turned us in that direction. But basically what we found out is that there were a lot of notable names that took part in this initiative. Everyone from Lawrence Rockefeller to Bill Clinton to Hillary Clinton to Leon Panetta, George Stephanopoulos, Al Gore, Jack Gibbons, Bill Richardson, and Mac McClarty. Now, unfortunately, Bill Clinton was stonewalled. And after 3 years of trying to get this out from the echo chamber, it failed. So at that time, a key decision was made on the Clinton team and also through John Podesta. I'm sure you've heard the name before.
Uh-huh.
That they were never going to speak of this again. And that was true up until 2002. And in 2002, well, let me just backtrack. In 2001, Dr. Stephen Greer of the Disclosure Project put on this massive consortium at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. I think scores, around 500 of military intelligence, government, civilian witnesses came there to testify that, hey, we have evidence, we have facts, and we are ready to present this in Congress if we had the time to do so and the opportunity to do so. And then, of course, 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And when 9/11 happened, the UFO topic was put on the back burner with no flame on. And the following year, something very interesting happened. John Podesta, who you're going to hear refer to me a lot, or I'm going to refer to him a lot.
Okay.
He was the Bill Clinton's White House Chief of Staff. He was President Barack Obama's transition chair, and he was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. There's a big connection there. And John Podesta is a very well-connected guy. So here's what happened. In 2002, John Podesta came out to Washington, D.C. to the National Press Club during a Coalition for Freedom of Information event. And on the record, he said, it's time to open up the UFO files. The American people can handle the truth, and it's quite frankly the law. And that was pretty unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the media picked up on it a lot. There were some articles, so forth and so on. And then all of a sudden, the following year in October of 2003, Lisa, John Podesta again came out to the same National Press Club, and he reaffirmed his statements from the prior year that we need to get the information out. Now, when a man of his stature does something like this, people really ought to listen. This is great. So some news articles came out, the press talked about it a little bit, so forth, so on, whatever. In 2004, Governor Bill Richardson, who wrote the foreword to the Roswell Dig Diaries, wrote an article on the San Francisco Gate of how the U.S. Air Force needs to reinvestigate its decision on what happened at Roswell.
And he was the governor. He was governor of New Mexico, right? Or is
that he was? That's absolutely correct. And he was actually supposed to be on Obama's team for, I think, like the director of national. He had some title, but it failed because there was a scandal and he just dropped out of the race.
Right, I remember that.
So he did that in 2004. And then in 2005, Bill Clinton came back to Hong Kong. He was asked some Q&A, and during the Q&A, some of those questions were related to his time during the Rockefeller Initiative. It was an indirect question and how he handled that and how some information could have come out about Roswell. So it was very interesting. And then in 2007, Governor Bill Richardson was a guest on Hardball with Chris Matthews. I think that was a Fox or CNN show. I can't remember. And again, he spoke about Roswell and the faltered story that the U.S. Air Force put out about Roswell. So you're going to see that there's going to be a very interesting story here, Lisa, and it's going to build up over time, and it's going to be quite exciting.
Because they've been trying to get the information out. Is that what it seems like, right?
So when the Rockefeller Initiative failed, although the Clintons and Podesta decided they were never going to speak about it again, in their back pockets they said, we might lay some breadcrumbs so that we can indoctrinate ourselves into this in case it ever came back up. So that's why Podesta came out to the National Press Club, said what he said. That's why Governor Bill Richardson did what he did. But that's just the beginning. So after 2007, Lisa, when Bill Richardson came on to Chris Matthews, there was a little bit of a lull, right? There was about, I think, 6 years before anything happened again.
Well, X-Files was off the air.
Correct. But wait, the X-Files is going to come back into this in just a little bit. So in 2013, for the very first time in its history, from April 29th to May 3rd, Stephen Bassett, who I know and worked alongside of the Disclosure Lobby, is the executive director of another activist group called the Paradigm Research Group. Now, somebody with a lot of money in Canada supported Steve to put on this event called the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, which was a mock congressional hearing which consisted of 6 former members of Congress. Now, it spanned from the 29th of April to May 3rd. Now, 30 hours of the testimony that was delivered at the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., which was covered all over the place by the media, contained 30 hours of the Rockefeller Initiative. So that happened in 2013. So a year later in 2014, Stephen Bassett, who was getting ready to send the video footage of the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure to all 500 members of the Hill in Washington, D.C., was getting ready to send the DVDs out. Now, Bill Clinton obviously knew that this was going to happen, and Bill Clinton knew that part of that testimony on record was the Rockefeller Initiative. So in order to get a foot forward and indoctrinate himself into this, he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel. Now, when a president or someone of Bill Clinton's stature appears on Jimmy Kimmel, the president literally picks up the phone, calls Jimmy Kimmel and says, I want to be on your show. Okay, Mr. President, not a problem. And then Bill Clinton will tell Jimmy Kimmel, by the way, I want you to ask me about UFOs, right? Those questions are all scripted, 100%. So the presidents know exactly what kind of question is coming. Now, you can watch the video on YouTube of Ben, I think his name was Ben Hansen, former FBI analyst, actually did an analyzation, or I should say an analysis of Bill Clinton's gestures while Jimmy Kimmel was asking him about the UFO topic, and it's quite interesting.
How so? What happens?
But well, you could see his hands tense up when he's asked the questions, amongst other, the other questions that were asked him. You could see he's gulping a little bit. His eyes are looking back and forth, and it's just, you could see he's a little uncomfortable with the questions, even though he knew that they were coming because he's live on television. And the UFO topic is the most serious topic of all humanity, simply because the ET topic transcends every issue facing the planet, whether it's religious, whether it's socioeconomical, whether it's energy, whether it's medical. So you have to understand this is a very, very, very serious topic. But he appears on Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel, the funny thing is, though, is that the DVDs actually didn't go out for production. They hit a snag in production, but Clinton didn't know that. Had he have known that, he wouldn't have gone on Jimmy Kimmel. So again, this little snag happened, and he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel, and Kimmel asked him, if I put my hand on the Bible, and if I was president of the United States, as a joke, being a comedian, I would go straight to the vaults. I would find out all the secrets about Area 51. Did you do that? And Clinton said, I tried to do it, but I couldn't find anything. Okay, great. Now, this is going to get so interesting now, Lisa. Watch. Just hold on to your seats. You ready for this?
Uh-huh.
In 2015, a year after President Clinton appeared on Jimmy Kimmel, John Podesta, upon leaving the White House after he transitioned the Obama administration, he put out what we in the community refer to as the tweet heard around the universe. Now, you may or may not be familiar with this. So Podesta put out a tweet, and I'm going to quote exactly what that tweet said. Finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again, not securing hashtag disclosure of the UFO files. The truth is still out there, and he CC'd somebody named Maureen Dowd of the New York Times. Now, here's what's interesting on that tweet. One, Podesta used the term hashtag disclosure. The reason why that is highly significant is during my time with the group I referred to earlier as the Disclosure Lobby, which was a big activist group on Facebook for social media, we sent out millions of tweets, thousands of faxes to the Hill about this particular initiative. We used the term hashtag disclosure. So the fact that Podesta, a man of his stature, used that means he was absolutely following us. Now, here's the other interesting thing. He CC's Maureen Dowd of the New York Times. Now, Maureen Dowd is a long time heavyweight of the New York Times.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Very prolific.
She wrote an article. It was an op-ed on a Sunday of the New York Times in '97 called "We Are Not Alone." And what the topic of that story was Maureen was also challenging the U.S.'s Air Force's sort of like blue book closure of Roswell and saying, hey, that didn't really happen. You guys should start talking about the truth. A month after Podesta made that tweet, guess who came on to Jimmy Kimmel? President Obama. President Obama came on to Jimmy Kimmel, and in the exact same verbiage that Kimmel asked Clinton, he asked Obama about the UFO issue. And Obama knew those questions were coming. And what Obama does is he actually injects some humor into it. I forget what that term is called, where you tell the truth, but you tell it in a joking way that no one really believes you.
I think it's called stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I guess like in layman's terms, that's what it's called. But I think there's like a term for it. But what he does is he sits there and he says, I can't talk about it because that's what we're told to say. The aliens hold strict control over us. They won't allow us to do anything. And what he was doing is he was actually telling somewhat of the truth, but injecting humor. It's almost like plausible deniability. Like no one's going to believe that Obama's saying this, but he's actually saying it. So what happens is you find it on YouTube, just like Jimmy Kimmel. This guy from the FBI does an analysis of Obama's movements in slow motion. You have to see it. It's unbelievable.
And it's online?
So
all this stuff is online, these clips that you're talking about?
Yeah, these are real clips from the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
Okay.
So that was in March of 2015. Podesta strikes yet again in September of 2015. So Hillary Clinton, during her campaign, goes on to the Lena Dunham Show. Now, I'm sure you know who Lena Dunham is. She was one of the lead actresses on the show Girls on HBO. Mm-hmm. And what she was trying to do is appeal to women, young women, to, hey, you guys are millennials. You should go out. You should totally vote for Hillary Clinton because she's going to rock the house, whatever it is. And during that interview, I suppose Clinton was hoping to be asked questions about extraterrestrials from Lena Dunham. And Lena never asked Hillary Clinton, about the UFO topic. So Podesta puts out another tweet about this. This is unprecedented. And he writes, and I'm quoting this, great interview, Lena Dunham, but Lena, ask her about aliens next time. And what he does is he says, hashtag the truth is out there. And this time, this is amazing, he CC's Hillary Clinton, officially bringing her into this publicly on the record. You literally can't make this stuff up. So that was in September of 2015. Now, in October of 2015, 1 week prior to Hillary's first critical primary debate, guess what? Bill Clinton schedules himself again to be on TV, but this time he appears on the Stephen Colbert Show, where Colbert asks him, hey, if we were faced with an alien presence on Earth, what would you say as the president, as a leader? How would you project that to the public? And Clinton says, listen, I think that we should express to the aliens that we're willing to cooperate with you. It's in our best interest. We can share different technological advances. And it sort of harkens me back to what Ronald Reagan said at the UN. I think it was in '87, correct me if I'm wrong, where Reagan stands up there and he says, I wonder what would happen as a species if we were faced from an outside alien threat. Would we just drop all of our differences, and would we reunite as just a collective? And so Clinton sort of asked something similar. Now, that was in October of 2015. Now the skin on the hair on my body is about to raise, because this is going to be something that I've never seen before. So December 2015, holiday rolls around. So the Podesta team, or I should say the Hillary Clinton campaign team, which is headed up by John Podesta, decides that they're going to test the waters with the public, but more with the media. So what they did is they went to a place in New Hampshire called Conway, and they went on their campaign trail, and they stopped there, and they went to a reporter by the name of Damon Steer, who I happen to know, and he asked this question back in 2008 when he was with another paper. I think it was The Sun or something like that. And he asked Clinton back in 2008 when she was trying for presidency back then, and he said, hey, what's this deal with UFOs? Can you talk to me about it? And she never answered him. She never said anything. So fast forward 7 years later to 2015, Lisa, they went back to the same place. It wasn't a coincidence. They chose to go there. Now, you have to understand something. It's at the end of the year. Congress is out on holiday. It's very quiet. So they decided that we're going to try and test the waters now, because maybe no one's really listening.
It's a slow news week, right? Everybody's shopping and traveling.
Yeah, exactly. So they go back to Conway, and they go back to Damon Steer purposely. And he asks her on the record. She goes on the record. She didn't have to do this, but she goes on the record, and he asks her about the whole UFO thing. And she says, if I become president, I will make it my business to dig into the UFO files and get whatever I can. I may even decide to send a task force into Area 51 to try and get out all the information. But she said something else, which is bizarre. She says, by the way, I think we may have already been visited. We don't know for sure. I was like, I had to do a double take. I was like, wait a minute, what? You just dropped a disclosure bombshell. No one's going to literally take you seriously, but you literally just told the truth.
Well, that's why she lost.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
No. There's a lot of different things that have been going on, but the fact that Clinton said something like that, I could not believe it. It was just unbelievable. So what happened was the media wrote all about it. It was during December, and then of course people forgot about it, because that's what happens with the media. Then they report on some Kim Kardashian show, and everyone goes gaga, and they forget about the real stuff in the world, right? So that was the end of 2015, Lisa. Mm-hmm. And I hope this is all sort of coming together for you and making sense.
It is making sense. It's very in-depth. It seems like these people have been trying to communicate about this for a long time now.
Oh, yes. So now, January of 2016 rolls around. To coincide with the return of the X-Files to Fox, which, by the way, if you saw the first episode of the newly rebooted X-Files, they dropped every bit of truth bomb in there that one could expect. It was unbelievable. It was almost as if the CIA wrote a script, handed it to Chris Carter, who wrote the X-Files, and said, just film this and put it out on the air. It was unbelievable. But for the first time in their tenure, what they did is the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, for the first time, and for the return of the X-Files, aligned themselves by tweeting out 10 different UFO files that might be appealing for Mulder and for Scully. Here's 5 for Mulder, here's 5 for Scully. We think that they would absolutely love this. And they hashtagged the word flying saucers. for an agency like the CIA to do that for the very first time speaks a lot of volumes to me, and should speak a lot of volumes, especially from an agency that has used disinformation and discrediting a lot of people for a very long time. Shows a change in viewpoint from military intelligence, right?
Yeah, it sounds
So
like
that was
some
really cool.
millennials got in there into the building.
Now it's going to get better. February of 2016, here we go again. President Obama goes onto the Ellen DeGeneres show. Now, Ellen had a little cute smart girl named Macy. I think she like a presidential whiz. She's been on different shows. She could recite every president from the first all the way to the last. It's incredible. And Obama was talking to her. So, as scripted as you would think, she asks Obama two questions. She says, "Is there a book of secrets? And are aliens real?" Now you can see Obama in an analysis video actually turns his eyes and stares at Ellen when Macy asks him that question about aliens, as if he knows it's coming. So listen to how he actually responds to her. He stalls and asks Macy, "Well, what do you think, Macy? Do you think they're real?" So he did that purposely to stall, to give him time to figure out how he was going to answer her. It was a great deflective tactic. So then when she says, "I don't know, what do you think?" Obama goes back and he says, "Well, the truth is, Macy, we haven't had any direct contact with aliens yet." Here's the funny thing. The first part is he was wrong, because we have had direct contact with aliens. Secondly, he chooses to use the word direct. He absolutely could have used the word "we haven't had any contact with aliens at all," but he chooses to use the word "direct contact." It's a very, very specific word that denotes, hey, we haven't actually had face-to-face contact, but maybe we had a wow signal picked up by SETI back then, but I'm not going to tell you.
Well, he is a lawyer, though, so they do know how to, make sure that you have words in there so that nobody can come back at you later, right?
Exactly. So he was very particular and meticulous with what he used. But he was trying to tell a story. So anyway, so that happened. In March 2016, Podesta goes on to KLS TV and is interviewed by Steve Sebelius, and he reaffirms his remarks that what Hillary Clinton said in Conway, New Hampshire is absolutely true, and if she becomes president, then she's definitely going to dig into the files. Mm-hmm. Then March 2016 rolls around, and guess what?
What?
Who do you think appears on Jimmy Kimmel this time?
I'm going to go with Bill Clinton.
No, Hillary.
Okay. I was halfway right.
Now, Hillary was expecting Jimmy Kimmel to ask her the questions about UFOs, and he does. Mm. And she talks about how there's a new nomenclature. We shouldn't call it UFOs anymore. We should be calling it unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so the fact that she's talking about all this stuff is highly significant. She's doing it on TV across the entire U.S. where there's a huge viewership and everyone's seeing it, right?
Right.
So it was just amazing. April 2016 rolls around and Podesta goes on to Jake Tapper on CNN, again reconfirms that if Clinton becomes president, so blah, blah, blah. He's going on all these shows and he's reconfirming it, that this is all real and that she's going to do it.
Which, I just want to interject, like over half of the people in America do believe that there's some sort of alien life form or life forms.
So at this point, you're absolutely right? So I think there was a Roper poll that was done where it's like more than 51% of people believe that the government's hiding something about it or that we've been visited.
Right.
At the end of the day, the government should just put up or shut up. I mean, at this point, it's just like, guys, just come out and tell us the truth, really, seriously. We've got your number. You've been caught with your pants down. Enough is enough. Stop lying. Here's the problem, Elisa. They want to tell the truth, or a certain sect wants to tell the truth. But at the end of the day, they don't know how to do it without getting their fingerprints all over it. They've lied so much that they don't know how to get out of it, right? So that's the problem.
It's like dating a sociopath?
Yeah, it's like a catch-22. But the game is almost over. Here's what happened. During Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, something extremely interesting happened with our friends at WikiLeaks. John Podesta's emails were hacked into, and out of those emails were, I'd say, about 7 to 10 emails of correspondence between a gentleman by the name of Tom DeLonge. Do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah, Blink 182.
Yes. Now, DeLonge has been involved with this for a while because he's been a big, passionate believer, just like myself, just like you, just like millions of other people. But he decided to use his stardom to sort of catapult something and sort of spark something. What we know is that Tom DeLonge was given an advisory team of 10 high-level officials from the Pentagon to assist him with getting a disclosure message out. Of the peoples whose names that leaked out from these emails are such: General William Neal McCasland. He was the former commander of the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which was the same base that apparently the dead ET bodies from Roswell were shipped to.
You know, I've heard that rumor because I played Dayton, and someone told me that they brought in the bodies on the railroad tracks. They brought them in railroad cars.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true or not. I just want to, but yeah.
No. They were apparently shipped there.
That's
and
what,
this guy was the head of that research laboratory up till a few years ago. Now he works for some private firm. So you have to understand that. He's the former commander of a huge secretive lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where ET bodies went to. That's one of the advisory team members. The next person is a gentleman by the name of Michael Carey, who was a former brigadier general and special assistant to the commander of U.S. Space Command. He was also responsible for writing the foreword to Tom DeLonge's book, Secret Machines, which came out about a year ago. If you haven't read it, pick it up. It's a good read. Finally, and the most exciting out of all of these people that I love to see on here, was a gentleman by the name of Robert Weiss. Rob Weiss, if you look him up on LinkedIn, is currently, and I underline, italicize, and bold, currently the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Advanced Development Programs at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Now, Lockheed Martin is the world's biggest military defense contractor. Skunk Works is the secret research and development arm of Lockheed Martin, which builds secret aircraft and is also purportedly the ones that build the intergravitical reverse-engineered ET craft. And here is a guy who is literally the head of Area 51 classified programs with Skunk Works on the advisory team. One of the emails that have leaked out shows that there was a Google Hangout, similar to the one that we're on right now, between John Podesta, Michael Carey, Neal McCasland, Rob Weiss, and Tom DeLonge. Now, what I'm about to read you is General McCasland's email to Tom DeLonge on how disclosure should actually play out. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready for this. I'm with bated breath.
Cool. So the first email that came out was dated, I'm pulling up the email as we speak, January 25th, 2016. It was from Tom DeLonge to John Podesta, and the subject title is General McCasland, referring to Neal McCasland. And I'm going to read for you verbatim what DeLonge says. He mentioned he's a skeptic, and skeptic is in quotes. He's not. I've been working with him for 4 months. I just got done giving him a 4-hour presentation on the entire project a few weeks ago. Trust me, the advice has already been happening on how to do all of this. He just has to say that out loud, that he's a skeptic, but he is very, very aware, as he was in charge of all of this stuff. When Roswell crashed, they shipped it to the laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. General McCasland was in charge of that exact laboratory up to a couple of years ago. He is not only helping me to, he not only knows what I'm trying to achieve, he helped assemble my advisory team. He's a very important man. So that was an email to Podesta about the general. Now, here's the memo. So this is Tom DeLonge on September 24th, a year earlier, writing to John Podesta. John, I received your email address from your assistant, as from time to time I would like to get you information that is not appropriate for others to see. Here is one of those times. The ranking general, i.e. General McCaslin that we just talked about, has some ideas for a memo that would help provide context for his and the other officers' work on this project, referring to this disclosure initiative. General's thoughts. So what I'm going to do now for you, Lisa, is bullet out what General Neil McCaslin was telling DeLonge on his thoughts on how disclosure should play out. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I was thinking a bit more about what a White House memo should say. Something like these points to all federal agencies. Bullet number 1. In light of the president's policy on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, we should talk about STEM, because that's what the ET issue falls under. You should talk about some background on your project. The administration also encourages a favorable public affairs position by all agencies. NASA needs to spearhead the disclosure initiative from what the general's saying, because this type of outreach is within their job jar. And if no agency under federal government is going to be appointed with this particular initiative, then everyone will just say, okay, we noted it and we're just going to file it away, which is why he's saying NASA should be the one that should be leading this, because they are what civilians deem them to be, a civilian space agency, even though that's not really true, because they are an agency that sits under the Department of Defense. So it's just an illusion to the United States citizens that NASA actually is a civilian space agency.
Oh, I didn't know it wasn't. I didn't know it was part of the defense.
Yep, it's stationed under the Department of Defense.
Huh.
And the last bullet from the general says, and make sure that you all coordinate with the Department of Defense, the Department of National Intelligence, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA, because those three entities are the other major space actors, and by including them, it would put a bit of light on this whole entire initiative. So that's all well said and good. What you basically had there was basically the general saying, hey guys, here's exactly what's going on, here's what I think should be happening, and we should be putting stuff together to do this.
Yeah, the general's just saying, let's go ahead and disclose this information to the Gen Pop, basically, yeah?
Exactly. Now, that all happened during Hillary's campaign. Here's what's super interesting about this. Hillary Clinton, unfortunately, and John Podesta, for lack of better other sort of examples, ran a failed campaign for Hillary Clinton, and she lost. Mm-hmm. Because we were really hoping that Hillary won, because she would have delved right into this topic. But unfortunately, she lost. However, are you familiar with the app called Signal?
No.
So Signal is an app similar to WhatsApp, where you get a lot of encryption, right? So it's end-to-end encryption. So Stephen Bassett of the Paradigm Research Group has a friend of sorts that sits deep within the bowels of the Pentagon and sits on a team, a highly sensitive team, that is directly responsible for managing the ET issue. And he's known this person for 20 years of the work that Stephen has done in the advocacy realm. When Hillary Clinton lost, Stephen received a one-directional text message on the Signal app from this person. And what this person said is that if a situation is created where the SecDef, i.e. the Secretary of Defense, is approached and asked about the ET issue, then that's when this particular team was ready and willing to provide the Secretary of Defense with the ammunition that they needed to make the disclosure announcement. What? Unbelievable.
So you're telling me somebody from the from the prior administration, or this person was just 20 years, like they've just been left over their administration to
No,
administration?
so there's a team that sits deep within the walls of the Pentagon that is responsible for managing the ET issue, which sits under what we call USAPs, Unacknowledged Special Access Programs. So there's two different types of
This is like
right?
real X-Files type situation.
Right. So
Okay.
there's two buckets here. There's what we call SAPs, Special Access Programs, and then USAPs, Unacknowledged Special Access Programs. Here's the difference between the two. If I was involved in what's called a SAP, Special Access Project or Program, and you, Lisa, came to me and said, hey, Russ, can you give me an idea if there's such a program and if it exists and what it's all about? I will come back to you and say, I can confirm that there is such a project, but Lisa, you're not read into this program, so you don't have a need to know. Sorry, can't tell you. That's what a special access program is. An unacknowledged special access program is if I was sitting in one of those programs and Lisa came to me and said, can you tell me if this such program exists? I then turn back to you and go, I don't know what the hell you're even talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the unacknowledged special access programs, which the ET issue falls underneath of, there is no oversight by Congress. So it's what we call the black budget of the black budget. So any money that gets thrown under the table, Congress has no idea that money is even being spent on that or how much is being spent. There's no oversight. So that's where the ET issue falls under that because it's the most closely guarded secret. And it's not even really a secret, right? There's nothing that was ever hidden or covered up. That's sort of like the misidentification of this whole phenomenon is that there was no cover up of the ET issue. It's called the truth embargo, similar to Cuba, right? We embargoed Cuba where we said, yeah, Cuba, we think it's over there, but we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to travel there. We're not going to even acknowledge it.
We're not going to smoke their cigars. We're not going to drink their rum.
The ET issue is the same thing. We know it's there, but we're not going to acknowledge it. We're not going to talk about it. And so it's really what it is this embargo of the truth. There's no cover-up. I mean, you can't cover up something that has been exposed over and over and over again. And there's only so much lying you can do about it to cover your butts. So anyway, this person that is friends with Stephen Bassett, who sits on that internal team in the Pentagon for the ET issue, says, Stephen, if you can create a situation where the media, and he didn't say the media, but I'm assuming that's who it is, where the Secretary of Defense, which, by the way, you have to understand something here. The Secretary of Defense, Lisa, he is not even read into the ET issue. He has no idea about the extraterrestrial issue. But the team that sits under him does. So if the situation was created where, let's say, Fox and CNN and Vice News and MSNBC went to the Pentagon and said, Mr. Secretary of Defense, can you tell us about this ET stuff? The Secretary of Defense is going to say, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And that's when the Secretary of Defense is going to turn around to his team that sits under him and says, can somebody tell me what the hell is going on here with the ET issue? If that situation were to be created, then that team is ready and willing to support an announcement by the Pentagon. But you have to understand something here. The Pentagon cannot make a disclosure announcement. It would be treasonous for them to do that. They would be thrown in prison. Mm-hmm. The only person that can make a disclosure announcement is an active head of state, i.e. the President of the United States. But in order for the President of the United States to make that announcement, he needs to have support and backup by the Pentagon, who holds this issue to their chest. The White House has nothing to do with this. So a deal has to be cut where the President goes, Mr. SecDef, I'm going to make this announcement. Please tell me that you're going to back me up on this and be supportive. And what the Pentagon is going to say is, Mr. President, we absolutely will, but you need to make sure that you're including us in this announcement and you're going to do it the way we want you to do it. And that's the deal that has to be made. So there's a lot of things that happened with that, right? So the CIA did a massive data dump. I don't know if you remember this back just a couple of months ago, but they dumped 13 million previously declassified documents on the open web, 2,500 of which are about UFOs. Whereas what happened back then is if you wanted to read those documents, You had to be like the most dedicated of dedicated UFO researchers. You'd have to go to the National Archives in Washington, D.C., sit on one of four computer terminals and get the information. So instead, what the CIA decided to do is they decided to come out and just dump it on the open web.
Could they do that? I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but can they do that legally? Just dump all the information?
Yeah, because it was previously declassified. It just wasn't in the public domain widespread, right?
Right.
Like I said,
you'd have to go and like do the grunt work.
Exactly.
And they were like, just stay home and have your Doritos here.
So they basically gave everybody a Christmas gift, is what they were saying. Like, ding dong, here's a Christmas gift. Go ahead and just scour through all the UFO files.
Got it.
Right there. And then in March of 2017, guess who goes on to Jimmy Kimmel?
Is it Clinton?
George W. Bush goes on to Jimmy Kimmel, and guess what Jimmy Kimmel does? He asks him again about the UFO topic.
Uh-huh.
So what's happening here is the reason why the disclosure activists even was incepted in the first place. And if you can all go to our website, www.disclosureactivists.com, you'll be able to see everything that's about us. But the reason we formed is we're trying to, from a grassroots effort, appeal to two different buckets of people. The one bucket of people that we're trying to talk to is people within the UFO community, right? Because there's a lot of people in that community. The problem is it's a very siloed and fragmented community.
Well, yeah, y'all are in the basements a lot.
It's not even just that, but it's that everybody's like, oh, well, we should talk about this, or we should talk about that, or we should do this, or we should hold these big festivals. I get it, guys. The festivals are cool. Everything's awesome, but it's become way too sensationalized, way too commercialized, almost like folklore in a way, right? Where you go and everyone's got these big blow-up alien dummies and they're wearing tinfoil hats. And like, I get it. It's fun. But at the end of the day, if we want to change as a species, if we want to live our lives without envy, hate, or greed, we want to just love and respect and move this planet and Mother Earth forward from where we are now, because we're not in a good place, Lisa, at all.
Well, I know. It's because patriarchy's running this bitch. We need to dial that back.
Yeah, we do. But we're in a dire place. We are cutting forests down beyond control. We're slaughtering animals. We are slaughtering ourselves. We are killing the earth. We are in a dire position. And the only thing that will stop this from ever happening is an acknowledgement that, guys, we are not alone. We have had contact with sentient, intelligent life forms, and you will get to meet them one day through open contact. There needs to be a baseline. And in the UFO community, everyone needs to agree on just one thing. You are a believer because you believe that we've been visited by extraterrestrial intelligence. If you believe that, then we need to collectively put our hands together, sign all the petitions that we can, let our voice be known that this needs to stop. On the other aspect of it, there are tons of people that either A, aren't believers and are still very skeptics or debunkers, or people that just don't know this topic at all. And so we're trying to appeal to those people as well. And we're not there to preach anything. We're not there to convince people about anything. We're just here to say, guys, here are facts, period, the end. Read them, make it whatever you want it to be. And our goal is to hopefully get strength in numbers, make people heard through social media, get these facts out, so forth and so on. And on the flip side of that, going back to Tom DeLonge, I believe what you're about to find out in the next couple of weeks is that there is $1 billion investment being done right now through Steven Spielberg. J.J. Abrams might be hooked to it as well, but it's definitely Steven Spielberg, where they're planning on coming out with different documentaries and short films and movies over a 5-year span to indoctrinate the general public to the ET presence. It may break before that.
Right. Well, he did produce E.T., right? He was the director, producer on E.T.
And Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
So this is obviously something that means a lot to him.
Well, Spielberg knows what's going on. He was read into the whole thing. That's why he made E.T. and that's why he made Close Encounters. It was a way to disseminate that information through Hollywood films to the public.
Conditioning?
Exactly.
Preparation?
So, in fact, if you even
I
go to
just
the
thought it was a
CIA
quality
website,
film. You're telling me there's an agenda?
exactly, exactly. But what Close Encounters was, it was their way. It was their way to say, guys, this is real. In fact, I remember there's a story that's been floating around on when I think it was either E.T. or Close Encounters, but when Ronald Reagan was president, he had Steven Spielberg in the room, and there was about 7 people or 8 people in the room. They were screening the movie. It was either Close Encounters or E.T. And then when the movie was done, Reagan walked over to Spielberg, put his hand on Spielberg, and said, there's only so few people in this room that actually knows that what you just put on there is actually true.
Oh, wow.
And it's just incredible, Lisa. I mean, the whole story is unbelievable. I don't think people really understand that there's this whole timeline and all these events that led up to this very holistic experience and story. And if people really understood the facts and people really understood what was been going on behind closed doors, I think they would be apt to move towards a more activism type approach.
Yeah,
so
there's
that's
a
where
lot
we
of
are.
situations
We're-
like that. If we all knew the truth, I think we'd be more inclined to be like, wait, let's stop pretending, and fix.
Yeah, the problem
fix
is,
these
though, is
aspects.
that the corporately controlled media, Fox, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, they've got an agenda. Their agenda is to sell ratings. Their ratings are falling now, which might be good, because Fox has been putting a UFO story up every single week. So although they sensationalize it a little bit, they're not making as much fun of it as they used to. So the tides are turning, things are changing. But I think people, especially when you look at different parts of the country, they go home, they watch Fox, and they're like, whatever those guys are saying must be true. And so everyone's been brainwashed. It's been incredibly unfortunate. But I think consciousness is changing. I think people are starting to smell bullshit. I think people are waking up, and eventually this is going to break. And when it does, it's going to have, a waterfall firestorm effect.
Well, let's hope. I mean, I do think there's definitely a shift in consciousness. Maybe we're all ready to wake up to some truths. And I
think that
encourage
could be the
people
case, yep.
to check out your website. Go ahead and plug your website again, because there's so many interesting tidbits on that site.
Sure, it's www.disclosureactivists.org.
And thank you so much, Russ, for giving us this information and your time. You've been very generous and very insightful.
Yeah, thank you too. It's a pleasure. And as things progress, let's certainly stay in touch. I'd love to definitely reconnect at some point.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, Russ. And thanks y'all for listening. And please join me at lisalandry.com. Tune in for next Womanist Wednesday. And yes, Ari, I will totally take you to Roswell and return you to your people. I love you.